My name is Brad Lev. I am the host and founder of Studio Gourmet, the talk show that's not about the food. This evening we're having a great show with Chef Mathew Accarrino from SPQR. He's going to do a quick demonstration for us. We're going to come back into the room and do a pretty in-depth interview, and then at the end of the event he's going to treat us for some delicious small bites from SPQR.
Hi, Mathew Accarrino, Executive Chef at SPQR Restaurant in the Fillmore District of San Francisco. Here with Brad Lev in Studio Gourmet. Going to be demoing a dish today, a smoked trout with a fingerling potato salad, and providing some other dishes that are exemplary of my contemporary take on Italian cuisine. Elements for this. There's some nice watercress. I've taken some shallots and just sliced them. And again, being the sort of crazy chef that has to have everything perfect, I'll take all the shallots, I make my guys slice all the shallots and then punch out and just keep the nice rings. And then you generate all this trim. So we actually divide that and cook them the same way in red wine vinegar with water, sugar, and some red wine itself. And then they get these deep, nice color, and they're pickled. You end up with all that shallot trim. This is what to do with it. You puree it. So you end up with a little bit of shallot puree. So it's kind of something, and I guess someone brought that to my attention that in my cooking I seem to do variations of the same ingredient. So whether it's like we have these rings and this puree, or corn a couple different ways on the same plate, but for some reason that speaks to me, and I always seem to do it. And I must do it without thinking about it. Some trout roe we have, and then just some fresh horseradish. So what I'm going to do is actually place this into the oven, just briefly, while we make our plate. This guy was just sort of it's really is a pastry tool, but we use it for just about everything, the plate, the sauce. It's what's become sort of one of the very important tools in the modern kitchen. Put a little bit of that shallot puree. It's really simply dressed potatoes. A few of these shallot rings. The great thing about this is almost all of this can be made ahead. These potatoes can be made ahead. The trout's really made ahead and then just flashed in the oven for a minute to warm up. And so if this was a dinner party dish, this is a great dish. This is a great kind of concept for cooking because it allows you to be with your guests most of the time. And then only there for the last moment in the kitchen. So now, as we warm this up, this skin just gets really, really soft. It's kind of all natural gelatin. It gets really, really soft, but it also keeps the fish itself really moist. Another little handy tool, microplane. And the horseradish raw, I guess, I love it. It's like, you know, you can put it on meat, you can put it on fish. It's a really interesting, sharp flavor. And the microplane, which is actually originally a woodworking tool, I don't know if you know that, but we used to go and buy them at Home Depot years and years ago before whoever decided to put this into a kitchen store has made a lot of money. Just gently lift the trout. Lay it over the top. And we just garnish a little bit of the trout.
In the food business a long time. While I was there, I actually started Studio Gourmet as kind of like just a fun activity. And when I moved back here to San Francisco, I thought it would be a great place to start it up again. And the reason why I really do it is because to me, chefs are artists. They really have a passion for their food, and the plate to me was the canvas. And the ingredients that they have, the things that they use are equal to their paintbrushes, and so it's really, for me, amazing to be able to watch these individuals do the things that they do. But more importantly, every chef has a different background. They have their personal taste, where they're from, their influences, and that's what makes them all individual. Each chef has a different style, and that's what we're here to learn about, is why they do the things that they do. I don't really talk about the food, I talk about them as the people and where they're from, and their stories and their experiences, and that's where they are today.
Two reasons to me very early on that I thought about cooking. One was we sort of didn't sit down after a while and eat those family dinners anymore, because Dad worked till 9 p.m. and Mom cooked, but nobody, you're not going to corral all the kids to sit at one time, so that sort of went away, and my dad would eat at 10 o'clock at night because he was working those long hours. And the other thing is, as I got more into the bicycling, my diet as an athlete became more and more important to me, and so rather than just eating anything, I was sort of like in there.
So you're actually preparing most of your own meals and learning about healthy food and all that kind of good stuff.
Well, learning, I mean, at that point too, is like, if you're an athlete, you don't realize how many calories athletes burn, and sometimes it can be a chore even to eat enough. As I said, I think the early roots of me being a chef came about from just happenstance, and as things went along, I was absolutely dead set on being a cyclist. I thought it was the only thing I was ever going to do, and then you start to realize that you're not going to be able to make very much money doing that. But that wasn't really the reason for the change. I was in high school and I was playing frisbee, of all things, after school.
Femur.
Yeah, apparently when I was born, I had a bone defect in this leg, and it was basically a void, a benign tumor. But as I got older and got taller, it got bigger. And so it was sort of like one of those things that they would never, you wouldn't know about it because there's no reason to x-ray it.
Yeah.
And so I just remember jumping up, catching a frisbee, landing, and looking up, and my right heel, I'm on my back and my right heel is in the air, and I'm going, this is not right. Something's wrong here. And
so you were playing frisbee and you just fell back, or?
well, I jumped and I landed, but I landed on this foot, and that was enough to break the bone. But being that there was that void there, it was a pretty sort of catastrophic break. And next thing I know, I'm going to the hospital, and a funny part about that is I had a Dr. Pepper and Skittles, right before this game of Ultimate Frisbee or whatever it was. And you go to the hospital and they said, we'd really love to give you pain medication, but that Dr. Pepper and the Skittles has to clear your system first. So it's going to be X number of hours. And I'm just thinking, like, why did I eat that? Of all things, Ruptured your spleen with the bone, and like, it was horrendous. It was one of the most horrendous things that could ever happen to anybody. And I remember them taking me to the operating room after waiting for the Skittles to pass. And,
wow.
And them saying to me, there's a chance you're going to lose your leg. And I thought to myself, like, are you serious at this age? And that was it. And then they put me out. But so when I woke up, I was frantic to find that I still had a leg. But days later, I mean, they have all the tubes. I mean, I have not done anything like that to myself since or before that. So I would imagine that things have improved in terms of, every year the medical industry gets better at doing what they do. But at that point, I mean, I have a scar that goes from just above my knee to a little above my hip.
Wow.
And they had to take bone from my hip and mix it with coral and get myself to regrow bone here. And then I had nerve, I can't feel anything on this side of me. And I had nerve damage, and it was just horrendous. And basically,
But you're lucky to have your leg, though.
they cut enough nerves and enough muscle and everything else that I had to learn to walk all over again. And that was one of the hardest things that I have ever done in my life. Because you just don't realize, you take those kind of things for granted very much. And as that process went on, I was obviously not riding a bicycle, and I couldn't bear weight on this leg for a year, maybe a year and a half, without crutches or some form of something, for almost 2 years probably. And there was I have titanium and all this stuff. And actually, 5 or 6 years after the accident, I went and had surgery to get all of it taken out and everything. And now I don't run so well, but I get around just, I mean, I should be fine. But
You still bike though?
I do, but I can't. I could, and what I found was I could never do it at the level that I thought I was going to afterwards. It was a catastrophic injury that sort of changed my life. And part of that was laying on a bed for a lot of hours because there's nowhere to go. Yeah. And so what I did was watch Jacques Pepin and Julia Child and all the other things. And frankly, I mean, when you're laying in a bed and you can't do anything or go anywhere, at some point, all you start to think about is like, what's the next mile marker for me? Lunch? Dinner? I mean, that's it. You can't go anywhere. So you just start thinking about what your next meal is and just laying there. And so part of that got me into cooking. And actually, it was, this was in the very dawn of sort of the Food Network days, and I caught a couple shows with Emeril Lagasse on it. So, the longer that I cooked, everybody just kept saying to me, like, hey, you should really go to culinary school. You should, you're good at this. Go do this, And so my letters of reference came from people like Emeril and whatever it is. Again, sort of back then it was...
It's a pretty good reference to have.
But I went to CIA in Hyde Park in New York. And so back then I remember, I had good grades in high school. I did good on my SATs. I had all these great letters of recommendation. All this, I put my application. I was like, and I don't know if it's that way anymore. I don't think it is. But I was like, oh, please, 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 let me get into this school. Let me get in. And of course, they let you in. But at the time, I was 18 or 19, and I went into, and it seemed that there were a lot of career changers going to culinary school at that time. So if I'm 18 or 19, I think there was one girl that was 24 and everybody else was 30 plus at the time. And so I was the baby of the class. And we started with 72 and 12 graduated. And back then it was really, a lot of people didn't make it the first 2 semesters, and then you go on your externship at that time for 6 months. A lot of people never came back. They just stayed in the industry and didn't come back to school.
So what year did you actually graduate from?
98. I mean, the reason that I got into this business was to create experiences for people and to be there for them. And so it can be hard to work all of those long hours, but at the same time, when you go somewhere and provide a great meal and somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I had a great meal at your restaurant, that pretty much makes everything worth it, more so than anything else, for me.
Have any of them been into SPQR?
Yeah, all of them.
So what do they say? What are their first opinions when they walked in?
Well, they didn't say anything. I'm sure, it's like, again, it's like so many of these people, especially the people that I've worked for, have produced so many different chefs that come work in their kitchens and then move on and do things and at all different levels. Mm-hmm. And I look at the people that have worked for me and gone on to do different things, and I think the way that it is you really will do your best to sort of make sure that the people that stay with you for a good period of time learn something valuable and are able to take that and move it down the road and hope the best for them. And you are as supportive as you can possibly be of those people, because they reflect in part you. And it's pretty evident. So I think, like, I won a Star Chef's Rising Star Award last year, and
2010.
And Thomas came to the thing and was really proud.
That's awesome. Do you guys know about that? That's pretty.
So it's a great thing, and I think you look at the other people like Corey at Bennu, who's worked for Thomas and won some great awards, and Jonathan, who you worked together at Per Se. And so if you're in the business long enough and you're doing the right things, you're going to start to produce people that are going to go on to do great things as well. And I think being proud of them is one of the great benefits of having worked that hard and worked with people that are of that caliber. It kind of dawned on me that maybe my long-term goals weren't necessarily going to be met by being in that restaurant. Mm-hmm. So for me, it made better sense to leave. It's like you can't start shopping for something new until you give up the old. And so part of that was being able to give up the old. Another pretty good part of that was my friend was getting married in Tuscany, and I was able to spend about two months there, month and a half there, with him, and not have to worry about it. And I could, I've pretty much continuously had a job ever since I could work. And so with rare exceptions like that one, where you don't have to think about where you're going to be headed next, it's actually kind of nice.
Especially when you go to Tuscany.
So, And it's interesting. I mean, I've never done anything else at this point now, but be a chef, really, in my adult life. And so I don't necessarily know how it is in too many other businesses, but I can tell you that having done this long enough, just about every chef at some point has a gap in their resume, as we call it, where they don't do something for a while, where a business doesn't work out, and then you end up taking a break. And so I was kind of happy to have that break. After moving out to LA for Tom to open a restaurant there, and then leaving, I was already on the West Coast, and I had some affinity for San Francisco because I'd come up here several times on weekends and things like that, and I was using a lot of farms that are up here, and I started to sort of wonder, like, where is Marin Roots? What is the Embarcadero? Like, what is all this stuff? Where am I getting this product from? What is Soul Food Farm? All that kind of stuff. And so I would come up here, and I realized that I liked it up here. And so as I sat there in my apartment in LA thinking, where am I going to go? I'm either going to go back to New York or I'm going to go somewhere else. San Francisco was on the top of my mind. And I really had never heard of SPQR other than Nate Appleman, who was a chef that preceded me, had put a book out. And that book did fairly well. And so A16 got a lot of press, and I think SPQR got some press as a residual of that. But I'd never eaten there. And then I just got contacted by the owners, and the rest was sort of history.
But you actually had to cook a 7-course meal for them.
I think I chose to cook 7 courses. Maniac.
So what was it? What was on the menu?
Wow.
Too much?
Probably a lot. I mean, all I did was go. I drove up here, went to the farmer's market, bought what looked good, made something. I remember I set up a circulator on top of, I went to one of the owner's houses and cooked, and I set up a circulator like we had out front there on top of her laundry machine and all that other stuff. And they have another restaurant, A16, that's very regional, rustic Italian, that's very different from my cooking style. And so for them, I think it was one of the first times where they saw something just completely different than what they had been doing for a pretty long period of time.
Chefs are very, we're in a city where there's a ton of talented chefs, and they're in a mindset to where they need exposure. And this is very important to their well-being, because they want to fill their house every night because they think they have something interesting to offer.
And you don't get the same angle, if you just go up as a consumer.
Bringing that to people in an easy-to-come-to atmosphere is very cool.
I love how it moves around. So, we've got the actual, cooking demonstration, and going into the studio and hearing his incredible stories and really getting more of an intimate, time with him where we can, all have the theater seating, and then coming out here, trying the food and mixing with people who have similar interests who are here as well, to really hear about and learn more about the great chefs in San Francisco.
And it's just incredible to get an insight into how they ended up here at the forefront of the industry in San Francisco. So it's cool. He's also a New Yorker, so I dig hearing another transplant's view on San Francisco. So it was neat. And then I tasted the trout that he cooked at the demo, and it was incredible. So beginning to end, right there.
Hi, Mathew Accarrino, Executive Chef at SPQR Restaurant in the Fillmore District of San Francisco. SPQR is open 7 days a week for dinner and Saturday, Sunday for brunch. Please come join us and experience our modern take on Italian cuisine.
Hi guys, thank you for coming tonight. I just wanted to say thank you to Circolo and Mathew from SPQR. Stay tuned for all our events. To check out any more information, go to StudioGourmetSF.com.